Welcome to the adventures of self. Conversations with ordinary and extraordinary people as they explore what it means to be self-expressed. Come on in. Join the adventure.
So welcome, Alex Boianghu, to the Adventures of Self.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here. Really excited about this.
Yeah, me too. So we were talking a lot before we got started, and there's a lot for us to get into. But I thought we'd just start to give an introduction to a little bit of your experience, and maybe even what drew you to come on to this podcast to speak today.
The journey has been really interesting, and and I don't want to take up too much time, but I will give it a succinct attempt here. That at a really early age, I experienced some deep insights, and one of the major insights was of impermanence. That no matter what I was doing, no matter what I was going to do, it felt as though that it was like sand slipping through my fingers, and that quality really upset me, really got me frustrated. At the same time, it drew me much closer to the question of, is there a quality of being that is stable across all of life's experience? Some sense of a fundamental nature, fundamental self with a capital S was what I was curious about. And that opened up the door for Buddhism for me, and it's been Buddhism for the last 40 years, combined with other Advaita Vedanta, the non-dual path of Hinduism, the non-dual path of the Sufis. All of the non-dual traditions have been completely, my home for me. And what I did with that, and I brought that into my Western psychotherapy training, and basically, I don't know if I say blended them or united them, but found a way to help people, as you were asking, how to integrate the deepest aspects of who they really are, not their conditional self, and then to stabilize that as an ongoing experience in life, throughout all of life. Nobody gets out unscathed. Nobody gets out unconditioned. Nobody gets out without getting their teeth knocked out and some blood drawn and getting your head hit, metaphorically and literally. So nobody gets out. So this notion of a life unscathed, or finding a resting place somewhere at the end of the rainbow after acquiring all of the social norms, it doesn't exist. That landing space doesn't exist in what we've been taught. And the non-dual traditions say that that landing space is embodied wholeness. That exists. Therefore, if we know what that is as an experience, we know how to cultivate that, then that allows us the ability to work with what is the human condition.
Yeah, wow. So that's a really, really amazing introduction. I think we're going to have a lot to speak about for however long we have here today. And it's interesting because you say that, so you have a lot of experience in Buddhism, Hinduism, say for the last 40 years or so, and bringing that into therapeutic practice. You've worked as a psychotherapist for 30 years, yeah?
30 years, yeah.
Yeah. And sort of the psychotherapy that we have in sort of Western society, is it, just to sort of explain, because some people may or may not have experience with it, how is it different from this, just to kind of draw the distinction from this non-dual aspect of what we recognize from Eastern spirituality. And I think at some point we'll probably need to go into what non-dual is, because people may say, "Oh, I've heard of that, but I don't quite know what it is." But let's start with looking at the kind of psychotherapy and the therapeutic model that we work with in the West.
Let's begin with understanding consciousness before we describe that, because
Okay.
if we don't understand the nature of consciousness, then we'll see that the two worldviews, West and East, have a complete different understanding of consciousness, therefore the psyche. So that's the beginning place, right?
Mm.
So let's begin with a classic non-dual text in the Advaita Vedanta tradition that basically describes the three different aspects of consciousness that are happening within all of us all the time. They're the three Ks: knowing, the knower, and the known. Okay? Everybody will get this in a second. Just got to hang here for a little bit. The known are the objects of experience, which are what? Thoughts, emotions, and sensations, projections, and so forth, right? Those are the objects of experience. The knower, that's the subject side of experience. The subject is the way that I perceive myself. I am this ethnicity, I am this gender, I believe these things. It's all the beliefs and assumptions and so forth. That's the subject side. So what is that called? Subject-object duality. Now here we begin. The last one in the West, we've never introduced that, which is the quality of knowing without conditionality. It's like looking through the window with no filter on the window completely. It's seeing and experiencing this experience exactly what it is without my prior lens onto it, which is, as Eckhart Tolle, this is the power of the now. The power of the now, the subject-object duality, collapses. Why? Because we no longer associate ourselves with emotions, thoughts, and sensations as that is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So from the Western perspective, in philosophy and psychology, the human being is broken, and there's something wrong with them. There's a problem inherently in the person, and we're going to fix that problem by moving things around in the psyche, which is basically like moving furniture around in a room, maybe window dressing it a little bit, but fundamentally the person doesn't actually arrive at the embodied wholeness. They may feel better. They may feel better at the fact that they talk to someone. Let me say that. They may feel better because there are some methods that may reduce a little bit of the anxiety or depression. But I'm not interested in reducing. I'm interested in transforming the root causes of suffering. That's it. So it's not just let me feel better from my anxiety, because that's not the issue. The issue is all the other stuff that's going on underneath, which is deep embedded in the subject side of the equation. So also, that's one quality in the West. The other quality in the West is a Cartesian view of a split body mind. Therefore, there is this thing called an I am inside my brain, and this vehicle is just being dragged around by my perceptions of myself, and therefore I am simply a thinking being.
And one of the things that I get, I mean, sort of from what you're speaking from my own experience, is that understanding in the West, it kind of assumes that this body, this sense, this mind is all we are, right? So we kind of end up trapped in that, right? Because we look out and we see, oh, here's Alex, there's a tree out there, there's other people, there's cars, and I have nothing to do with any of that. And I'm kind of caught and trapped in my own feelings and sense, which is quite tortuous, and you know, like you can't go anywhere. It's like, oh, there I am. I just keep hitting up against, oh, there's another emotion, there's another sensation, whether it's joy or sadness, right? Like they all kind of come and go. And you're kind of at the whim of them, and that's what I found in my experience, the limitation of them, because it's like, well, that's it, right? And then there's this other thing out there, the world, existence, Alex, the computer, everything else that's not me.
And the not me creates the illusion that I'm some kind of a centralized creation outside the participation with the vastness of the whole.
Yeah.
Which is just an incredible misperception. It's incredible that we still to this day think that we're somehow an isolated being.
Yeah.
Onto an island unto myself.
Yeah.
And from the Eastern perspective, you are intimately interconnected with all of consciousness. And you can experience that quality of connectedness without losing one's own individuality. Meaning, this creation is its own unique thing. Alex is a unique manifestation, none other from anybody else. But that doesn't imply an isolation. That actually beautifully also implies a interconnection. It doesn't have to be isolation. But that's not what I'm speaking about here, is not a thought. And here's the other thing. What I'm speaking about is direct experience right here, right now with you, of my interconnectedness with experience. And there are certain qualities that come with that experience. A quality of spaciousness, timeless, okay, unbound, joy, love, power. All those words come along as a description of that quality of being that's not conditioned and doesn't belong to the mind. So
yeah, that sense of beingness, and maybe that's in what you were talking about, like a knowing that is outside, well, it's both outside me and within me at the same time, because I'm connected to it. But it's
you can collapse all that. You can collapse all of that in 1 second. It's just letting go of the language of inside outside. To be honest with you, beingness may feel localized here, but you could also experience the infinite quality of beingness at the same time as you can feel its containment, if you want. So instead of looking at dualities, it's an integration. It's both. Sorry, just to get this. That's very important. Understanding.
Yeah, I mean, because I think what we've done here is talk about how certainly in the West, we have this sense of I am this and you are that. So there is this. So that's the duality, right? It's like there's me and then there's the world, the universe, or all other existence, and that's a duality. There's me and there's that, and one of the problems with that is, well, good luck feeling useful or important, because it doesn't take too long to realize that the world, let alone the solar system or the universe, is a heck of a lot bigger, longer, everything than you are as an individual, right? And so that kind of actually shrinks you, diminishes you to so then you go out and maybe you feel like you need more cars or houses or what shoes, or I don't know, what books on the shelf or whatever it is, to make yourself feel a little bit bigger than you are in your limited sense of self. And so that continues that creation of separation, that assumption of separation. And what you just brought up there, because I was thinking about this, and I can't remember where I first came across this. I don't know if it was Terence McKenna or somebody like that, spoke about the difference between Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy can be thought of from like principles of logic, very, very simply. So in the West, when we talk about something is either A or not A, right? We don't talk and say, well, you're this, but you're also not this thing. You're either alive or you're dead. You're either individual or you're connected, right? We see things as very dual, very, very separate. So you are A or not A. And in the East, Eastern traditions going back thousands of years and probably longer or whatever. And actually, there are some Western traditions, mystical traditions that we could get into, but traditionally Eastern traditions, it's perfectly consistent to say that something is A and not A, which goes to, I think, to your concept of both, because when I see that, I mean, that was like revolutionary to me. It really took me a while to get a hang of that. And I remember like cycling around thinking, wait, how am I both an individual and connected to everything through all time and space? And eventually it just became sort of quite comfortable to hold the paradox. There's a paradox there, right? It's like, I'm either connected to everything and therefore I don't have individuality, or I'm just an individual and I'm not connected to everything, right?
You can collapse that. You can collapse all of that, because in the experience that collapses. In the mind tries to figure that out. In the experience, there's no need to figure it out.
And that goes to your sense of knowing, right? Which is outside of the individual. It's just experience. It's being. It's
It begins from here. The knowing. So it happens here. So
in the heart.
In the heart. I mean,
sorry,
it's kind of funny.
Listeners. Yeah.
No, it's okay. I mean, when we say here, it's kind of interesting. We keep coming back to the question of the individual. What is the individual? Because then the notion of the individual helps us understand how we become limited by time and space. If I feel that I am an individual separate and I'm just a thinking mind, that means time and space are contracted. If I understand that I am intimately interconnected, and at the same time, I keep going back to this, a localized expression of consciousness. Why do I have to separate the two? They're together. They're obviously together, by the way, because here we are. It's not like separate. We don't have to argue this notion. We just need to know how to experience it. And I've been trained by teachers and meditators on the direct experience of that. So there are methods that help us experience that and then learn to stabilize that as well. Okay, that's important. So going back to something about what you said about the East and West philosophies by I don't know the person that you had mentioned. If you look at the research in the last 20 years on neuropsychology and neuroscience, what we're realizing is the left brain, the left side of the brain, is interested in facts and simply wants to name things and to preserve life and keep replaying and filling in reality from the learned habitual stuff. The right brain is all about the big picture, holistic understanding. So look at this. Even our bodies are made to hold both. So we don't have to argue, and we need both. We need both. What Ian McGilchrist in his book on the brain and the emissaries, I forget what it's called, and he talks about that. The left needs there to survive and get things to function throughout life, and then you do that, and then you could relax that goes into the unconscious. Now here comes in the right brain of like, how do we perceive wholeness within this? So it's time for us to stop all of the discussions of inside, outside, one or two, simply holistic.
Yeah, and so in the work you've done, I mean, like, principally, because you talk about like bringing these together, and bringing this together in your practice, the synthesis of East and West. So how has that developed for you? And because I know you're talking about, creating a map that you see that is consistent for everybody, right? So I'm really interested to get into what it is that you see as the similarity and how you actually synthesize that for people. Because, you and I can have a discussion, but obviously you've got patients and clients that come and obviously have challenges in their life. So how does that work practically?
Sure. And if it's okay for me to give a little bit of the map, so that'll help answer that, because that guides what I'm doing with everyone for the time that they're with me, right? So let's begin, and we'll do a short one just for time-wise. at the moment that we're conceived, one of the first aspects of the body to develop is the nervous system. Before everything else goes, it's the nervous system. And the way I see it is that the nervous system is the interface between non-dual being wholeness and the environment and our outside life. So that the nervous system is the mediator between our internal world and then dealing with our environment, right? So we come in as a nervous system. This is very important. Why? Because it's the nervous system that becomes conditioned. What does that mean? When the baby is in utero, all the mother's energies, all that she's thinking, all that she's feeling, all of the cortisol, all of the adrenaline, all of the hormones are going through the baby. All of that. So its earliest environment is the input of the environment, and it gets digested by the nervous system. So if there's information that the environment is not safe or anxious, or there's something going on, the nervous system already, look at this, at such an early development, starts to become more contracted, more bound up, more rigid, in order to start to address those needs. You see? That's the beginning of conditioning. Okay? You can see where I'm going with this. Then we come out, right? And we come into the new environment of the family, the society, the culture, the religion, the philosophical, political views of the entire environment. We're not separate from that. We're being influenced by all of that. Me growing up in New York City, at an early age, well, that had an influence. I didn't grow up in Oshkosh, right? It would have been different if I grew up in Oshkosh. So those environments, what does that do then? Well, here comes what we can't escape. All of our parents range from their having done their own work and giving us the best opportunity to feel our own wholeness, not to be happy or to go get a great job, but to feel our own wholeness. And then I can say, going down the line all the way to the parents who create the most amount of violence and harm, right? So you can see we have a range of conditioning influence on the environment internally. All of that's called trauma. All of these movements towards this is called trauma. What does the word trauma mean? In Greek, it means trauma, means to actually rupture. So what are we rupturing? The child is forced to rupture their own coming into themselves. And if you really look at the people you work with, yourself, if we simply say that all of us, what we really want is to be truly who we really are, uninhibited. David Bowie once said it on his 60th birthday, he said, finally at 60, I can relax and just simply be myself. At 60, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could just be myself. So the process of conditioning and the traumas creates a rigidity in the system. Therefore, the rigidity, what does it do? It's constantly projecting that rigidity in the way we think, in the way we feel, in the way we sense, and the way we perceive. Therefore, the subject is conditioned now according to those views, but it goes into the unconscious.
Yeah.
And then we think we're living some kind of life where all the parts of our life are somehow discrete. No. And the analogy I use is Charlotte's web. When Charlotte builds her web, it's beautiful. But what's amazing is this: no matter where Charlotte goes, she's still on her web. She can go to this corner, it's still her web. She can go on this corner, it's still her. What does that mean? We keep playing out the same themes over and over and over and over again. Where? In our relationships, at work, with money, with sex, with kids, with drugs, with exercising, with our spirituality, with our parents. I mean, I can just go on. It's like a cookie cutter, and we just apply the same unconscious material, boom, boom, boom. And what's driving that unconscious material underneath the rigidity is a deep experience, ontic, existential experience that I'm lacking something and there's something wrong with me. This is very important to understand. This is the key that drives everyone. This is part of my map, right? And this comes out of the beautiful work by David Loy in his book on lack and transcendence. The whole book is basically founded on the fact that we as human beings experience an ontological sense of lack. What does that mean, translated for everyday use? It means I can't find a sense of self that's stable, and I feel ungrounded, and I keep grasping for something in my experience to find stability and groundedness. And the East with non-duality addresses that beautifully. That's the whole methodology and philosophy is grounded on the experience of feeling that you are whole, and ontologically there's a ground. Ontologically there's a ground. I don't know, I don't teach people about Buddhism in my sessions or about non-duality. I don't teach any of it. It's simply the way we interact and the direction that I'm helping the person go to. There's no conversions, there's no discussion, nothing. It's just the way that the water is between us. You see? And then there's more. And then of course, like, how do we unconditioned? Well, then we get into the methods of unconditioning, deconditioning.
Yeah, and like one of the things you were saying in the beginning, right? Like if you go back to conception and being in the womb. So here's this fetus, this small, entity that's taking on all of this chemical, emotional, psychological, whatever, all these different signals from the mother, and maybe actually externally as well, right? There may be, the mother's taking on, through the father, through the parents, through the culture, whatever it is, and that's coming into that small child. So in a sense, there is this, as you say, like it starts with the nervous system. So the nervous system's taking in these signals, these impulses, and almost from the beginning, what I'm getting is things are coming from the outside and coming in. So all that stuff, when you're talking about like, Charlotte's Web, right? We have an assumption that the way we see the world is the way the world is, right? When we grow up, right? You grew up in New York City, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, mainly, and wherever you grow up on a farm, you grow up in the city, you grow up in Civil War, you grow up in the desert, or on an island, whatever it is. You grow up with a big family, you grow up as an orphan, anything. In those first few years, the way you see the world, you just assume that's the way the world is, right? And there's those moments kind of in like wherever it happens, like for me, I was probably more in teenage years, early teen years, where you'd come up against something and you'd go to a new place, or you'd hear about a piece of news and you'd go, oh my gosh, what I assumed, there's this other whole world out there that's not how things happen in Kathmandu or Buenos Aires or wherever. Like, actually there's a different experience, but well, I don't know what that's about, so maybe I'm just going to run back to my cave and live from my own experience. I don't want to go outside of my web. I'm quite comfortable in my web, even if it's sort of hitting up against things, right? And so I guess one question I have is, because you're very versed in the Eastern experience, is that something that is, so is that non-duality, is that just like, is it like a blanket that over sits all of society there, that people just come to this natural understanding of, well, yes, I'm an individual, but there's, how is that brought in? Because then there's the other question, like you saying, like there's tools, techniques that you can start to work with, patients and clients to help them with that understanding.
You have to remember something. The non-dual traditions are very small in number, and very few people actually either experience that or perceive that they want that. So it's not that when we say in the East, and I don't mean to imply that every person in the East is walking around with this worldview. They're not. They've been westernized, and so that worldview even before the Western culture was there, was not for everybody. It was more for particular kind of individuals that were drawn to that experience and understanding, and as you were describing, that my own conditioning and then therefore projections is simply a projection. It's not what really is going on. And you know the classic Zen proverb, right? The mountain is a mountain before you become enlightened, and then it's a mountain after you become enlightened. This something like that, like something. But the point of that is this: that when you look at a mountain at first, the mountain could be anything. We're just using the mountain as the reference point here. We have a lot of assumptions and projections, right? When we relax all those projections, our experience is intimately different. It's no longer I am climbing the mountain. There's an intimate connection with the experience and the mountain and you. There's a relationship. It's not separate. So that everything that I do is about letting go of the separations. Okay, that's really, really important. Letting go of separation. We let go of conditionality. We're letting go of separation. Start to experience the intimacy of the now. That feels amazing. And it's, by the way, some of the methods are very, very simple and very direct. Nothing fancy. Simply breathing. Simply the power of breathing. Mindful breathing, incredible practice. What does that help to do? It starts to help to create a little bit of a distance from our thinking, emotions, and sensations. What does it do to the nervous system? It calms the nervous system down, right? So my work with everybody begins with the following: got to calm the nervous system down. Everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information studies that we are so, particularly in the West, and in cities, and it's a much more urban world, that everybody's kind of at a higher stress level. And when you are, then you are, your cortisol's up, your adrenaline's up, and your vision narrows. Right? Like, because it's like, ooh, what's the threat? Let me deal with this right now. I can't think about tomorrow or the world or anything else. I've just got to deal with this specific thing. And obviously there are, daily concerns that people deal with. So really interesting that, because, it is as simple as, you can take 30 minutes, or you could take 30 seconds, or you could take 5 seconds to say, you know what, take 2 deep breaths. How long does that take? 3 seconds, 10 seconds? That can be enough to open that vision by 2 degrees wider, 20 degrees.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes.
Yeah. And you said, sorry, I just lost the phrase because I really liked it, about letting go. There was a phrase that you said I really appreciated, this sense of letting go of things, because we're so attached to something. And when we, it's like, in my practice, my personal practice and professional practice, I bring a lot of attention to, the natural world, and we can see ourselves as connected to the natural world. And when we do, we allow ourselves to be in flow, and allow ourselves to I think you said allowing separation to dissolve. Yeah. And like here in the UK and in the US, right, we're coming into spring, right? We can see the buds on the trees, and maybe they're just starting to come, or maybe they're really coming, depending on where you are. And like here in the UK, we've actually had a very cold spring, and post Easter we had some snow in the last day or so, and that's a natural thing, right? We can think like, okay, it's spring or it's morning, and I'm gonna do da 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 da, and there's rhythm, right? There's cycles, right? We have daily cycles. Women have monthly cycles. We all go through annual cycles, and we're so caught up. It's like, well, it doesn't matter whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Christmas, Rosh Hashanah, like whatever the, you know, the Ramadan, like emails got to be done. We got to do this. It's all going to happen, you know, and we're caught up in all the rush, and there's something, like, as you say, really simple, but incredibly profound about very simple practices. You know, taking a breath, taking a pause. It creates just even a sliver of space that you say, I can, you know, it's like I can connect with the knowing, the heart, with something that is beyond my limited sense of needing to know and needing to get to all these things to do.
I'll give you an example of what you're saying. So I teach meditation, and I teach embodied non-dual meditation. And with all my clients, they all learn the basics of breath work. Everybody learns it. And what I see is that the session that I teach it to them, almost 100% by next time, if they do it, they come back and say the following things. They repeat the same thing. Every single person goes, I cannot believe this, that I was interacting with so-and-so at work, or, you know, child or whatever, whoever the so-and-so is. And I noticed that I was having this reaction, but I used my breathing and I felt completely different. And I paused and I didn't have my reaction. To that person, that sounds profound, right? But from a very basic neurological perspective, that's very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because the nervous system, as we spoke about, that has been wired and is conditioned for safety and simply then is just reactive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that causes lack of deep breathing. Then we breathe in a more shallow way. When we're breathing in a shallow way, we're teaching the nervous system that it's still on fight or flight. So then we continue in our lives, in our adult lives, to reinforce the conditioning through the way we're breathing. So all of a sudden, the person takes a couple of deep breaths. The nervous system goes, whoa, wait a second, deep breathing, oxygenation. All of a sudden, it calms down the nervous system. The nervous system calms down, which tells the conditioning, the wiring, that's about to be like, okay, we need to put this conditioning onto this situation. The conditioning gets slowed down and recedes back here. The person's like, I didn't feel that I was being controlled by my conditionality. Simple. Nothing complicated. And then we move into mindful breathing. Then we get into more of the meditation side of breathing, and that's in the next step that I teach people. See, I have a progression that I go through.
Yeah, and so, like, yeah, you start with one breath. Like, how do you climb a mountain? One step at a time. So sure. you can start your embodiment and your path to wholeness as one breath. Yeah, it's really interesting. I've mentioned a couple times recently, because I mean, I've done different breathing practices, but I've been doing Wim Hof breathing since the beginning of the year. I don't know why, I just chose to do it, and I do it every morning. And I was talking to a friend of mine over the weekend, and I was kind of saying, "Oh, I'm not sure if it's really doing anything," right? And he said, Taylor, your posture's changed, the way you talk about, you know, physical ailments. Like, I got hit by a car when I was a kid, so my back was always sore. And he said, I haven't heard you talk about any of that for the last 3 months. And I said, oh, that's really interesting. So it was like having a reflection back, that, because sometimes, you know, we do something and we don't necessarily see it, right? We imperceptibly, even if we're doing a particular non-dual practice, right? It's like, oh, let me connect with my breath. Let me meditate. Let me do this thing. How quickly and imperceptibly we go back to our perceptions.
Immediate.
Okay, that's good. I feel better about myself now.
But I'll tell you what the research about this shows, and it's very clear. So great. There was a great book written. Now it's 2 years, maybe 3 years. The Science of Meditation by Daniel Goleman and David Richardson, or Richard Davidson. I always forget which way his name goes. But in the book, they show the science and the research on meditation practice, and they include the different methodology in meditation because it's a large field, right? And what they saw was amazing. They were looking at how do we go from a state experience to a trait quality. This was incredible. So what they saw was that in beginners all benefited by having a state of, let's say, freedom, a state of relief, short states that would come and go, right? But all the great traditions said you can actually have that stabilized as an ongoing experience, and they called that trait. What did they see? Meditators who logged in something like 20,000 hours, 20,000 hours or more, maybe 25,000 hours or more. When they were interviewed, they all had the same characteristics. It was incredible. They were Alex, they were Joe, they were Bob, they were Cindy, they were, all these people. But the researchers were blown away that they had the same quality. Like picking up a rose and having different color roses, but they all smell like a rose. What does that say? They all stabilize the trait qualities of what? Right brain, deconditioning being. Powerful, you see.
Yeah, it reminds me, I don't know if it was said by Gandhi or it attributed to him and been said by many, something like, a thought over time becomes words, and words become habits, and habits become qualities, and all that, right? And so that's what that's getting to, right? Yeah, you can, if you breathe once, you can have this separation from your conditioning. If you breathe every day for whatever it is, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I mean, we are breathing, but mindful, bringing that mindfulness to it, you actually create a new quality for yourself. But
here's why. But just this one piece, so it doesn't seem mystical. Let's talk about literally what happens in the why. In the breath, as the nervous system calms down and the projections calm down, that new moment gives you an opportunity to have what we call insights about yourself, about life, about reality, that we couldn't have while we were still in the conditioning. You can't gain an insight in the conditioning unless you are aware that you're observing the conditioning. So the breath and meditation practice, by the way, this is the key, right? And there are many meditation practices for this, gives us an opportunity to have what are called insights, or another way of saying it, new learning, being like, oh, I just realized that I was assuming that person was thinking this and I was going to react that way. I'm realizing like, no, that's not really what's going on. And what we start saying is like, that's not really what's going on. Well, that's not really what's going on. Well, that's not really what's going on. It's like, right, because that's not really what's going on.
Yeah, and it goes to that. It goes what we were talking about in terms of like the awareness of just being in this, right? We think there's some agenda or something has to be done, which actually gets me to something that you raised before we started speaking that I want to bring in, which is there's nothing wrong with you. And I think this is such a profound concept, and I certainly have to remind myself of it. But because it goes to wholeness, right? The idea that we're separate, right? There's Taylor and there's the world, there's Alex and there's the universe, whatever it is, right? We then think, it goes to because you were talking, I can't remember in what context, but I think it's as the in the uterus or in conditioning as a small child, right? We think there's something wrong with us. We think that there's something we need to do to complete or fix or whatever ourselves, right? And if you can acknowledge or just even accept the possibility, just start with that there's actually nothing wrong with you. It's a there may be things you want to accomplish. There may be things you want to change. There may be new habits that you want to adopt, but that's radically different from saying, well, I have to be this thing because who I am now is insufficient and wrong and bad, or all these things.
We have to ask a question of why is it that every single human being to varying degrees feel that there's something wrong with them? The choice of those words comes from the experience of feeling a sense of frustration that no matter what I do, I can't experience wholeness. I want everybody to remember this. What we all want is to experience the fullness of the now. That's what we're all seeking. Okay, let's use ice cream. Very simple analogy. I go to Baskin Robbins, I get my flavor, and I'm eating the ice cream. In the moment of eating my ice cream, do I want any more ice cream, or is the craving gone in that moment while I'm eating the ice cream? It's gone. Wait a second, that's really interesting. That means while I'm enjoying that, I want nothing else because I feel complete. So is it really the ice cream that I want? To some degree, I'm enjoying the flavor, but the experience, as Rupert Spira says, is that what we want in seeking is to end seeking. And when he said this, it broke and connected everything for me at the same time. All day long, we are seeking to end seeking. That's what drives us. But when we can't end seeking, what do we usually end up saying? I'm frustrated with myself, and maybe there's something wrong with me, and that's why I can't experience wholeness. You see? And so therefore, no matter what kind of family experience you've had, people are frustrated by going to work and not feeling complete, having relationships not feeling complete, having all the money in the world and feeling not complete, having the things that they want and feeling not complete. Well, what did Siddhartha figure out under the Bodhi tree when he gave the teachings on the Four Noble Truths? What's the first few things that he said? Number one, life is inherently unsatisfactory. And he didn't say life. He meant that in your conditional way of experiencing, you're going to find unsatisfactoriness. And the analogy, he said, it's like having a horse cart with 4 different shaped wheels and sizes running through life. Clunk, 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 like this, you know? And if we really look at it, that's what we experience. And what was the second noble truth? Why is this caused? Grasping and seeking with the belief that I'm going to be happy through that. Non-dual consciousness, wholeness, the experience of embodied wholeness. Seeking collapses. The experience is everything is perfect as it is. Nothing needs to be changed. I don't need to go do something. I don't need to acquire anything. It is here and now. And we can all experience that as a lived, embodied way of being. These are not ideas. These are not philosophies. These are direct experiences. Very important for everybody to understand that. I don't dabble in mysteries, in mysticals, in spirituality. I'm not interested. I don't know where I come from, where I was. I don't know what's going to happen to me when I die. I don't know. I simply want to experience the fullness as I'm embodied here and now. That's it.
Yeah. It's a very, very good point, because I think oftentimes we can think it's like, oh, then I've got to go understand more, and I've got to adopt this tradition, or I've got to
nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. We're deconditioning.
Yeah. I was thinking to ask something about that when you work with people, because they come, we all come with conditioning, and so this is, to me, it's all kind of, it's not giving up, it's not abandoning, but it is like an unlearning, maybe it's a deconditioning, to just say, okay, that was a way, and I don't know, like I was thinking maybe even in the analogy you're giving about the horse cart with 4 clunky different size wheels, is the opportunity just to say, okay, there's 4 clunky sized wheels. Well, this is going to be an interesting ride. Not quite sure whether I'm going to veer off to the right or it's going to do this, rather than say, oh God, I've got to fix that one on the back left. It's got, this is always happening, and that's the thing that's wrong. We've got 4 clunky wheels. And
the 4 clunky wheels are not inherent. The 4 clunky wheels are acquired as a relationship of duality. So the experience of wholeness, then therefore that changes the experience of the variations of life. All of a sudden, life is going to undulate no matter what. But how am I riding that? What's my relationship to the ongoing? If I don't do well with that, and I come from a dualistic perspective, I'm going to create suffering upon suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I know how to ride the surfboard, and when it's really choppy, I can still ride. It's still choppy, choppy. That's the notion here. This is not some kind of spiritual bypass or some kind of mystical hokey pokey, like, yes, all of life will manifest beautifully. Bullshit. Shit's gonna happen. You just get to learn how to deal with it from a very different stance.
Mm. 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 And yeah, I mean, in that stance, what comes to me is just a real sense of stillness and kind of.
There is.
Yeah,
There is.
There's a part of me that's like grasping. It's like, oh, I've got to ask a question now. There's a part of me that's just to be still.
3 words: stillness, silence, and presence. I'm present, I'm still, I'm silent. And by the way, that doesn't mean I'm still without moving. It doesn't mean I'm silent without speaking. The stillness and the silence and the presence is from a deep state of being that still is part of life. Wu Wei, right? Wu Wei. Wu Wei.
The uncarven block, yes.
Action, non-action, and action and non-action, right? It's the way of being, like Tai Chi. It's the effortless movement, right? Without some identity-ness that's moving. It's an organic stillness flow at the same time. It's profound. But you're right, that quality, the fact that you just experienced that in what I was saying, that just shows you what happens in between people that work together with me, right? You experience that just in the dialogue right there.
Mm-hmm.
You experience that quality of just that stillness. Right there, if I was guiding you, I would just have you just continue to settle into that, breathe into that, experience that silence and stillness everywhere in your body, not just in your mind, in your heart, in your toes, all the way through your legs, all of you. And then to experience that stillness and silence also pervades your environment. Everywhere around you, 360 degrees, not just inside. It's infinite. There is no inside outside. There you go. That's right.
Yeah, it's really beautiful, Alex. It's it's kind of beyond words. I mean, we're doing a podcast, and there's a part of me that wants to have an expression for it, and I hope listeners or viewers have an opportunity to go with Alex's simple guidance. It's a profound experience, a profound opportunity to move beyond what we assume about ourselves. It's actually beyond thought, beyond concept. And as you said, it's an experience, right? We are simply in a space, as if we and the environment are just one.
It is. I was the analogy that I'll use is I like to use the sky and the clouds as a great analogy.
Mm-hmm.
When I was laying on my deck and I was looking up at the sky and I was looking at the clouds, and I was doing this I did this intentionally, and I narrowed my focus on the clouds, each individual cloud, right? And by narrowing my focus on each individual cloud, it was really interesting. I can feel a contraction inside my body because I was focusing on each individual cloud. It was really interesting, as though that the individual clouds were separate from the other clouds and the sky that it was in, just localized, right?
Mm.
And then I opened up my field of perception and I made contact with the sky and not the clouds.
Mm.
And then I experienced the sky-like nature, which is vast and infinite. Did the clouds stop coming and going? No. It's just that I was completely unmoved by their expression. What does that mean for us in our everyday life? What that means is this: when we experienced embodied wholeness, thoughts, emotion, sensation, and experience can come and go, but we are unmoved by that.
Mm.
And over time, the conditioning that we acquired will soften up, and therefore our thoughts, emotions, and sensations will change into their natural holistic expression. Instead of feeling thoughts, emotions, and sensations as binding us, we'll feel that emotions, sensations, and experience is expressing us. That's the difference.
Mm. That's a really beautiful concept because it goes to our ability to express. I think that I guess we could get into a discussion about what it is we're here for. But the fact is, as far as I'm concerned, you and I are having an individual experience, and there's an opportunity in that. There's an opportunity of expression. So I'm not interested in just sitting here and meditating and for the rest of my life and until I pass away. There is in my individual creation, there's something, it's like I'm just looking outside, right? And there are different trees and bushes and plants, and they're all expressing themselves. So the daffodils come up, the cherry blossoms are just starting to come out. The plane trees are still quite bare, they're not quite ready. It hasn't been warm enough. And everything has its time. Everything has its place, right? The early flowers are starting to fade away to make way for whatever comes next. And they all have their own individual expression. It doesn't make one better or worse or stronger or less. And I see, you, me, everyone here in that way as well. We all have an opportunity in the grand collective, in the universe, in unity, that we are living our own expression, our own individual expression of life, of joy, of possibility. And we are seamlessly part of everything that's there.
Beautiful.
Well, I think we've had quite a a ride today, and it feels like, I feel like that when you go to an amusement park and you go on the roller coaster, and you have that first moment where it kind of like ratchet and you go down the thing, and and you come back, and I just feel like we've just kind of like come back to like where we started. And it's like, because there's that moment, it kind of like everything slows down a bit. There's a bit of a long trek, maybe you go through a tunnel or something, and you come back and you're like, ah, well, that was an interesting ride. You know.
And the experience here right now, in the it's because we spoke about what's true. So you're resonating and experiencing the truth of what we said in your direct experience, and it's freedom and it's good news, and you can relax into that. There's a relief, a refuge in knowing what we spoke about as true. We can relax into that, and we can stop all of our efforts, fruitless efforts, to try to experience this. That's why you're feeling the way you are. It's not my truth. It's not Alex's truth. I'm just a student and a voice for all that has been done for thousands of years. It's just I'm another part of that light torch, you know, just in my own unique way. But it doesn't belong to me. I didn't come into the world saying this belongs to me. It doesn't. It's just, it's coming through me. That's, you know, it's coming through.
You and me both.
All of us.
Exactly.
For all of our listeners, the message here is everyone can live a life that's embodied wholeness, that's experienced as a deep sense of well-being, grounded, peaceful, luminous. All of us. That's the message.
Thank you, Alex. Really appreciated this journey, this ride, this experience, this embodiment of wholeness.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your energy, for what you do, for our interaction. It was wonderful, lovely, lovely, lovely.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you, listeners, for being part of this adventure and ride along with us.